Should be a bit of, well, hopefully a short vid, not too long anyway. Ceremony 55 last night, which was Monday. The new group, there was 7 of us as it turned out. Josh didn't do it, but nobody in the staff were ready to actually do anything. So that's fine because Gino's just told me that they're going to have, when they close, they're going to have a female shamana who's coming. To try a bit of different energy, and then the whole team are going to have basically a cleansing for everybody, because obviously the facilitators can sometimes feel tired, even though because they're working all day and then having to do these ceremonies in the night. And obviously there's, there can be accumulation of energy that they actually pick up just by being normal people. So that's quite interesting. And he also told me that Maestro Urias had quite a difficult ceremony himself last night with the energies that were involved, which wasn't apparent to me. I kind of thought everyone was quite clean in a way, because the vomiting was very subdued, quite quiet, almost polite, what I call polite vomiting, when people are just, being quiet, like, and then just hear the dribble, none of this big sort of like, bah! So that was quite interesting. I think most people in that group probably, they puked, most of them. I think quite a few did the second cup too. There was only one major problem, which I've spoken to the guys. They're all lovely guys. They're all in their 30s. 3 friends are software engineers, and they're very bright guys. They've got pretty good, software jobs in the States or wherever. And the Muslim guy, Jihad, lovely fella, very, very bright. He's got a software company, worked for pretty big places, and he's from the Oman, but lives in the States. Talking to him during the day, he's read a lot of religious texts. He's, very switched on, intelligent guy. But last night had some strange effects, which I've not seen before. I mean, if people get into a state of ecstasy, they might be seeing really beautiful things. You can have a bit of laughing, and that's great to hear that happening for somebody. But this was strange for me, because Maestro said at the beginning of the ceremony that it wasn't going to be overly strong. He said he just, it'd be quite just to start. You need to see where everyone is, and then and Wednesday will be stronger. So you need to just take it kind of easy. Although some people said it, like one guy said it was pretty intense for him. I said, but everybody handled it really well. But me and Jamie had the same effect from the behavior of Jihad, because about the last hour and a half, he took the second cup, which I didn't, because I felt kind of low after my cup. Again, long time to kick in, but it kind of hit me with just a low energy mood. But then it did get strong enough after the second cup, which I didn't do, because I started to feel just a little bit nauseous, not really there, but just not feeling particularly. I didn't have any bad stomach problems or anything, no physical discomfort like that, but I just, in my stomach, more physically, I just felt low, like a bit, so a bit lack of energy kind of feeling, and it brought on a bit of a low mood in ceremony. And then it kind of picked up as the Icaros, after the second cup was given out. It kind of picked up with the strength of the Icaros, and then I started to feel, something hit my stomach, like energy wave, bang, and it's like, that's just like an immediate switch on. So that was quite interesting, and just bringing on those sort of gravity wave experiences of the spiritual energy, in the temples, which I really like. But what was most interesting for me was getting to a level of strength of the ayah that would normally have Mama talking to me. She didn't talk to me all night, which was found really interesting, but I was happy with that. I just wanted peace that night, and after a couple of ceremonies passed where I have been in just short periods of time, but just in a really nice transcendental space of just peace, not even talking to myself, the brain chatter so much. So I just enjoyed that, 5-10 minute period where it was strong enough to put me there. And then unfortunately, the second cup really kicked in on jihad, and then he started vocalizing, just whatever was happening to him. I mean, he said today that he was just in like this stream of just downloads and seeing all sorts of stuff, and overall it was pleasant for him. But there'd be the odd laugh with continuous repetition for an hour of, oh my gosh, fuck, oh my gosh, fuck, and then sometimes slapping himself. Oh, so of course, then I was starting to get angry. That kind of the irritability started to build. No, go on, no, oh, Mama, nice one, thank you again. More, he was only 2 people away from me, so it's quite close. And then a couple of him and his good friend did actually have a bit of a chat with to each other, which obviously Maestro had forgotten to tell them before about not talking. That's part of like, don't have anything to do, don't have any contact with anyone in the ceremony. But they were both kind of probably enjoying their little space. Fair enough, but it went on too long. And Jamie told me this morning he was on the other side, and he said he first of all started to get angry with it because he wasn't kicked, because there's like this period where this space where you can be kicked right into high aya, and you've got so much going on for yourself. The outside world's almost blocked out anyway because you're so involved with your own journey. That's powerful that you're not really, you're oblivious to the outside world. But sometimes when you drop down and then you're in this halfway state, that you're neither right up there to have that kind of visualizations and just general sense of being really deep, that it's sort of frustrating because for me, I'm not getting a lot of visuals lately. So then you become really sensitive to the external world, and then of course you start to focus, like someone snoring, or for me in Iquitos, barking dogs that won't friggin' shut up when you're trying to get to sleep. So that really started to irritate me because it went on and it went on. And then, of course, I started to get into that simulation that Mama put me through, but without her being there to say, no, go ahead. It's part of getting rid of the anger. Go through the simulation of murdering him. And I'm like, well, I think I said it in the other videos, and then I ended up doing it in my head. And like for this one, I was just like, fucking wanted to strangle him. Fucking shut up. So, because it's really annoying. So it kind of, I suffered that for maybe an hour or an hour and a half. It was only, well, maybe an hour, because it was only the last half an hour with the soothing Icaros, because he said it was really intense for him. But he told me this morning, he wasn't aware that he was vocalizing so much. He thought he was, but he also thought that other people were. So he was just in a group. And for me, again, I suppose after last week, kind of just having the impression that I wonder what this energy is, because it's really difficult to tell whether it's pleasant experience for that person or whether they're actually struggling. So that's also a concern, because at one point I was really thinking of knocking on the floor myself and saying, Christian or whoever came over, lady, can you go and have a check him, he's okay? Because he wasn't knocking on the floor as if he was, but it was too much. And then with the odd laugh that was almost a cackle, because I'm starting to think, that's strange energy. And I started to think, fuck, is this another, just a tiny bit of kind of demonic-y stuff? Something, maybe a little narcissism going on where people are vocalizing because they're just so into themselves and just their kind of trip. So, because again, it's a big thing for me. And especially, I didn't mention this in the last video, but I had to go through a simulation with Mama. Something to do with my 2 sisters and being asked, can they be saved? Going back a couple of ceremonies, and asking this spiritual, philosophical, being asked by Mama, can they be saved? And of course, my initial reaction was, well, it's if narcissists, you forget it, because they never, you won't even get them to therapy, because their delusion is such that everyone else doesn't know what they're talking about. They're all assholes, and especially they don't need to go because it's everyone else that's at fault. And she said, kept just saying, can they be saved? That was the first initial reaction, no. Oh, I knew what she was driving at in a way. So I said, and I was going through a brain fog period as well, and like in this previous ceremony. and just didn't want to be bothered answering the question, to think about it. And I said, oh, I'd have to think about it, Mum. I'm not. Like, no, can they be saved? She's driving at the ideal spiritual aspects of faith. And of course, I knew what it was that she was driving at. And in the end, yes, with enough faith, everything's possible, miracles, etc. So it's like that in ceremony. That kind of level of sense of what world you're in, kind of thing. And then part of that was actually meeting, even though it's quite similar, this ugly looking demon like you see in many a horror film with the tongue sticking out, who was the actual top demon of narcissism. And if you watch things like the Pope's Exorcist, obviously there's a thing, I suppose, in the Catholic tradition where part of the job to exorcise the demon is find out his name, which in that film was Asmodeus, I think. So I was playing this role of this sort of knight of Mama, in the spiritual army, given this sword, big glowing, with the, lit with the spiritual fire, and being sent to interrogate this demon about my sisters, saying that effectively, I want them back, but I want them delivered without your presence, in their bodies, completely clean, with their original childhood spirit before their trauma started to put them on the path of narcissism. But the attitude was too cocky and self-righteous, and that was the lesson, basically, just to cut to the chase. But anyway, in this, I had the knight, this big sword to his throat, and the dialogue was fantastic between both of us, and he was really spot on. At one point, Mama even arrived present, and in that world, he was actually, polite to her, and they both said hello to each other, because of the recognition of these roles that they play in this spiritual world for the testing of mankind. So, and he was spitting at me, and he grilled me, really, about, I know who you are, boy. Who the hell do you think you're talking to? A bit like, the sort of the visits, the encounters with the devil in as I perceived him then, way back in the early days. Vision's really interesting because it's about the lesson and about hubris, really, and stuff, and having the attitude of basically being an important member of Mama's army that's just going to interrogate this demon and basically threaten him, because you know what's going to happen, because if you don't acquiesce, I'll have no choice but to destroy you, with this sword at his throat, and him just going, who the fuck do you think you are? I know who you are, but you've got no power over me, boy, kind of thing. And so, really, so I'm slowly pushing the sword into his throat. So, you know what's going to happen if you don't answer my questions or give them back. And asked him his name, and he was like, fuck off. I don't have to tell you anything, you fucking ass. It was really interesting conversation. And then when I asked him his name and he wouldn't tell, Mama kind of just popped in for a minute and just said, Stenk. And it was almost like it was a comedy for a brief second. Like, it was too close to stink. So you think, oh, daft play on words. But anyway, so he became the demon of narcissism called Stenk. just fucking daft. But anyway, but the dialogue was amazing. Unfortunately, I don't remember it. And yeah, he gave me a bit of a roasting and kind of. I don't know. I can't even remember how that situation ended. But then later on, the lesson being, I knew it was just about, because I was it's just to play this. Mum's sort of not saying it, but just the impression. Just run the simulation, Steve. Just play through it. It's a simulation. Just run its course. Like, okay, go through this threatening thing, the sword, the power of the divine white energy, and blah, all of this. And anyway, so it was quite interesting. But he just basically floored me with just his conversation, really. And so kind of lost that round. But then the lesson was, which I knew, the first lesson I ever learned dealing with demons back in Kapatari. You know, the shaman said the next day, you don't fight bad energy with violent or negative energy itself, because it feeds them. So later on, we were back in a similar situation. I just went back and apologized to him, basically, for my hubris. And that was kind of a lesson. So anyway, this is sort of like maybe still in my mind a bit, and wondering what level is going on with the other guy, because it was super fucking annoying. And it really changed my mood toward the end of the ceremony, because I felt kind of low anyway. And then by the end, the last hour, I was just in a really low mood. I kind of got over the anger. And Jamie said the same. He went through a phase where listening to it was like, he got really angry, but then he got involved and just going, just brush it off, you know, it's fucking no big deal, forget it. But then again, a bit later, you're drawn to it. It's like, fucking hell, man, you're pissing me off. Shut the fuck up. And this is a problem in ceremony. So again, this is all part of my training and how to deal with people in these situations. And it just worked out really nicely after breakfast. Most people had gone. There was only him and his really good friend left, and we were having a super conversation. And I kind of thought about this last night after the ceremony, whether it's my role, first off, to broach this situation, because I was pretty sure it wouldn't have affected just me negatively. So I thought, well, is it my role? And then you go through that and you think, well, okay, I probably have to wait for the right opportunity or create it to be able to broach this subject with him. And he was fine. And I was really, I did well. The opportunity came up, and then we were speaking about things in ceremony. And he happened to mention about what he was going through. So I asked him what he was actually perceiving through this particular period when it was the strongest for him. And he was explaining sort of what he was seeing. It was really overwhelming, but kind of nice, but there was a tinge of sort of like darkness as well at times, but it was all flooding and just kind of flooding him at the same time, which is why he kept saying, oh my gosh, and then fuck, but literally didn't stop. And so when he said it got onto that topic, it was my opportunity to say, do you realize how loud you were actually vocalizing? And that's when I said, well, you were. And I said, and this is quite important. I don't want to be kind of put you in a difficult, it'll make you feel uncomfortable, but it's really important because it's your first time, and the medicine works in strange ways, and it really had a strange effect on you. But your behavior, unfortunately, was very disruptive to other people. And he said, I'm really sorry. I said, but I kind of wasn't aware that's how it was coming out. He said, I sort of was aware that I was vocalizing, but I didn't realize about the impact because I thought everyone else was sort of in that same space and vocalizing too. So, fair enough. So it was fine. But, we said about, I put it in terms of, you've got to understand that other people in the ceremony could have loads of their own personal issues and be going through something really difficult or trying themselves. And your disruption can either make it, really off-putting or just really bad for other people, because there's 6 other people in the ceremony that are maybe in the same level of intensity that you're experiencing, but in a completely different space. And for, say, someone who's dealing with trauma or something, who are really going through some kind of personal hell, and then have your situation externalized for them to have to deal with as well, it can be really awful situations. And he understood that then and was very apologetic. And he said, but I couldn't really help it. I said, well, this is also, a lesson about understanding yourself in that situation and what power you have, and learning about that separation aspect of having the spiritual kind of energy to take control of your body, especially where other people are concerned, because we all have an obligation to try and control that for the sake of everyone else's ceremony. So it actually came out really well. And then he sat down and then journaled it. And it was sinking, and then I was left having a really good conversation. It actually killed the whole morning. I sat down with those two from breakfast at 8 o'clock right the way through till 11:45. So it took us right through till 12:30 till lunchtime, stayed down there, and then had lunch straight after breakfast. Like for 3 hours went really quickly with the level of conversation we were having. Because they're very bright guys. You know, all the guys here, they're all about in their 20s to 30s, maybe a bit older. Really nice group. But what was interesting was Maestro's experience that Gino's just told me. He said, Mike, because he's just had the chat with all of them, and now they've all gone to the beach. I changed my mind at the last minute because it's gone a bit chilly after rain. And I just don't fancy getting wet again. I've showered and I can't be asked. Because the river's really warm. If it's a bit cool in the evening and getting back on the boat, I just couldn't be bothered. And I kind of want a bit of space. There's only me and Jamie here, as far as I'm aware. And although that I can't feel any energies, I'm not on a diet, I can't feel any energies particularly, but I feel their absence to have a bit of peace. So you can in a way, I suppose, but it's the opposite. It's like you feel their absence from normal, which isn't bothering, but you feel them when they're gone, which is a slightly higher level of tranquility, but weird anyway. So that's quite interesting. But what happened with Maestro? There's two guys here from Moldova, and they're really good friends who speak really good English, which they learnt, interestingly enough, from watching cartoons when they were kids. They never had formal teachers, and they learnt their English, and it's fantastic. You know, the power of children's brains to just absorb and take in language, that innate ability of humans. It's almost impossible to stop kids learning language. As babies through to toddlers. It's such an important evolutionary feature. And so that was amazing to talk to them yesterday. Because I asked them where they learned their English. And they said, we didn't have any formal teachers, not even at college in Moldova, but they learned English from TV. So young, watching cartoons, you know, all day, every day as kids. But anyway, these two guys, when they went to talk to Maestro, and Maestro told Gino, and Gino told me, that they both saw the same thing in a vision, which was a feathered bird. And I don't know the significance of that, but according to Maestro, it's not a good thing. And apparently, because obviously my Spanish is shit, so again, lost out through being, well, I don't know, I'm not going to put myself, down or anything, but because it's part of the journey, the apathy and everything. This is a big demon for me, because of my whole life and the way it's panned out. So I feel like, I don't give myself a hard time because the path worked out the way it is, because that's the way it's supposed to be. You can look at it like that. And yes, you could have choice and stuff, but it didn't do it, didn't learn as much Spanish, and I've missed out those opportunities. But anyway, it would have been great for me to be able to talk to Maestro myself and really get these insights. But anyway, so I don't know the actual deep significance of this feathered bird in a vision, according to Maestro. And to me, the energies, the people who vomited once or twice, it was very quiet, wasn't it? Super energetic. I didn't feel uncomfortable in ceremony except for that one situation for the last hour with the external vocalizations, which was just a pain in the arse. But again, I also know, thanks, Mama. Oh, she wasn't there. So, yeah, thanks, Mama. You're doing it again. If it's not a snorer, either at night after or in ceremony next to me, you're working on the irritability. And I also know that Jamie's got an issue with that because of his trauma. So he was susceptible to it. And of course, that's being worked on, because if you have to suffer that in ceremony, the way plant medicines work, it's being marked for, not deletion, it's the wrong word, it's being marked for concealment in the Pandora's box with the magic lock on it, so that you suffer less in your normal life, or hopefully, eventually, if you do enough plant medicines, eradicated, like my fear and trauma triggering, that I don't suffer from anymore. So that was quite interesting. But he also said he didn't feel too good, almost in a ayahuasca. I think he said to me, was it slightly nauseous or a little bit sick as a shaman, because the energies that were the cumulative energies of everybody in that room gave him a bit of a hard time. But then, he just said to me a minute, he said, right, no, another one tomorrow. Yeah, no problem. He said, fuerte, strong. I said, yeah, why not? He smiled and he's gone off to the beach. So, and he also said at the beginning of that ceremony, before the ceremony last night, he spoke for the longest he's ever spoken in a ceremony, I suppose because the group's so big, giving a lot of information after Ivan and Gino had left to the facilitators to translate. We've got Christian here now and he speaks really good English. So he really went into some detail, but he did forget about telling people not to talk. He did say about no contact, with, don't interfere, but he didn't say specifically, don't talk to each other. So, but I think under the circumstances, they'd have forgotten it under the influence of ayahuasca anyway. I think that would have just happened anyway, but so that was the way it was. But he did tell them, because I could understand quite probably, I don't know, half to three quarters of what he said before the translation. And he did say, tonight I'm going to be kind of go a bit easier to, check how you are and how you react to the medicine. And then Wednesday will be stronger. So tomorrow is going to be a strong one. And I didn't feel like I wanted to do a particularly strong one because I had a strong one on Friday. And I just thought, again, I don't want to do this. Before as soon as I drank the first cup, and when it hit me, it wasn't strong, but I felt slightly nauseous. And I thought, do you know what? I could do with an easier night. I want to sleep. And that's exactly what I got. It's the earliest. I was probably asleep before 2 o'clock in the morning. Came back, had an apple and whatnot, and vomited and 1 round of diarrhea. Smoked my pacho, did some rapé, really pulled myself down, and then I was just gone. Mama never spoke to me once all night, which is a first. I can't remember the last. It's so long ago since I've had a ceremony where I haven't had a conversation with Mama. I cannot even remember not having one. If I've even not had one since the third one, if they're strong enough. I mean, if they're not, then it wouldn't be enough to get the link. But yeah, it was definitely strong enough for that, but she didn't appear. And I did sort of think of it this morning. I went, oh, hang on a minute. I wonder if she's punishing me for not going to the Philippines. But you think, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow about the conversation I had with Jihad, which is an interesting name because I did ask him about it because he's a very, very well educated and open-minded guy who's read a lot of books on all religions. And I was saying we were talking about the propaganda of the West and judging people instead of as individuals from group cultures because I'm mentioning tribalism as the fundamental sort of behavior of human beings because that's what we were for so long. And he was saying it means the holy war, but it also means protection. So it doesn't just mean, probably most people just think of the Muslim or the Arabic word jihad as relating to holy war against the heathens, that kind of stuff. But like many words in many languages, the same word can have different meanings. So really interesting guy, really nice fellas. But so now it'll be interesting to see how it hits him tomorrow and whether or not those vocalizations occur or not, and then talk to him on Thursday to see whether he had a similar or stronger experience, and whether he learned from the conversation and became aware that he had to control it. So again, it should be an interesting ceremony tomorrow, because it will be stronger. It was a different mix last night. Because it was a full bottle, so I assume it was a different mix because he's come in with a big litre bottle. But again, it depends what he said. What Icaros he whistles into the bottle before the ceremony, as the ceremony starts. So it's all interesting stuff as always. And so I've got 2 more to do, and then they close down for a month here anyway, as I think I said. So I'll be traveling, and that'll be that. So I'll catch up again on hopefully Thursday if it's not so strong that we're feeling a bit rough. Damn, Aussie. And go from there. So half an hour, cool.